Tinseltown. Welcome to Going Gray in Tinseltown. I am your host, Mandy May Cheetham, actress, writer, rapper, person who does laundry, podcast hostess. All of those things don't describe me as who I am. Well, it's 12 o'clock in the morning. I have been editing this episode for I think 3 hours because I love this woman so much. Pam Hyatt is my guest today. I don't know if I can ever really introduce Pam Hyatt and do her justice, but I can just say that to me, this brilliant actress and brilliant human being is my mentor, my muse, and frequently pisses me off and helps me grow. And thank God she does. And thank God she's on this planet. And thank God she agreed to sit with me for 2 hours and do this interview, which I have lovingly edited for you. Now, I cried several times just listening to it, and I cannot wait to hear what your experience of this interview is. So please message me at Manda Murhead, MandaMurhead, and let me know what your experience of Pam Hyatt is. Pam has been an actress for 30 years.
62. Well, 62 years since 1958.
62 years.
I better say 61 now. Yeah. I actually started in 57 in Montreal in the National Film Board film. Okay. Yeah, 62 years.
Okay, 62 years. Pam is my muse. I have written many characters about Pam in the shows that I've been writing. So that's one way in which Pam is my muse. Another way Pam inspires me is when we walk down the street together. I feel like I'm with a traveling road show when Pam and I walk down the street together.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
In a good way.
All right.
In a good way.
My mother said, when in doubt, take it as a compliment, darling.
It's like, when I think about acting, not always, but I like to think about the original actors who traveled in traveling road shows and went into town, and as they came into each town, had to sell their show as soon as they came into town. Mm-hmm. So today, Pam and I went for a walk downtown, and I think you probably spoke to 11 people. Yeah. Easily. Just complimenting them on their cell phone use, on their outfits, on...
Somebody smelled wonderful. Well, somebody had a great cologne on.
Someone had a great cologne. Yeah. Someone else was smoking a cigar.
I like that fragrance, yes.
And what so inspires me about this experience of walking down the street with Pam is there is no space, seemingly no space, between your impulse and your response to your impulse, which is what every single actor trains for. I mean, that's what the ultimate... experience. It's like you're expressing as you're experiencing, as opposed to trying to monitor yourself along the way. I think, which is also very related to this decision that I have made to go gray and cutting down that time between thinking about what I want and how I want to express myself, and then hopefully eventually eliminating any concern I might have over someone else's response. Mm-hmm. And that's the way that I see you approach the world as we're walking down the street. You're the band of actors coming into town, working off of your environment, expressing yourself with all parts of your body, and then giving the gift of your immediate response to the person that you are engaging with. I don't know that I've ever met anyone like that.
I've been kind of like that since I was a little girl.
Really?
Yeah. Mandy, I've never really seen separation between people. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
I don't see separation. I know the man with the cigar is not me.
Yeah.
But I feel no sense of strangeness about him. If somebody's exuding a major negative vibe and danger is going all around him, of course I'm going to walk around and not engage. But that's just the way I've always been, and my sons will both attest to that.
Did anyone ever try to shame that out of you or stop you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When, a group of people used to try to shame that out of me in the late 60s, early 70s. I was studying with a wonderful Buddhist monk, and I'm a very enthusiastic person, as you know. And a lot of my buddies in the group would say, "Oh, Hyatt, you are so uncool. I mean, really. Just chill, just cool it, would you please? You're just so uncool." And in 1972, when I realized I couldn't continue studying with the Buddhist monk, primarily because I adored him, but not because I adored him, but because he traveled, and I had 2 sons who needed to be in school.
Right.
And so I was invited to attend a talk by a man who taught metaphysics, Kenneth G. Mills in Toronto. And I went to hear him, and the discipline of studying with that man, I was warned about it. He said, "You may not take notes of what I say, because notes are mere fragments. And I don't speak from the idiomatic use of the English language. I speak from the source of the sound. So the discipline of studying with me is you can only take word lists. If I repeat a word throughout a lecture, write it down.
Right.
Or if I say a word that you are honest enough to acknowledge that you don't know the meaning of it, write it down. And then when you go home, open up a really good dictionary and look for the source, the root of the word, preferably the archaic meaning. And that should give you the source of the sound. And if you can't find an archaic root, then go to the English definitions, but try to find the definition that does not bifurcate spirit and matter, does not separate them. The first night he spoke, he kept using the word enthusiasm, enthusiastic. And that's what my buddies had been telling me I had too much of. So I wrote down enthusiasm. I went home. I looked up the word. It comes from 2 Greek words, a preface, en, which means in English in, plus the word theos, theos. And theos in English means God. So if you're enthusiastic, where are you? And I went, whoa, man, I'm never going to apologize again for my enthusiasm. And that's been the situation since then. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It's nice to know, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't have to be cool, right?
Oh, God.
I know it's boring.
It's so boring. And I think that's one of my mantras is stop being cool.
Yeah.
Stop being cool.
And allow your enthusiasm to express itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, I'm 43, so I'm going through the midlife crisis.
And I'm twice your age, as
sure.
you know.
Yeah.
I'm turning 83 in April.
83. Yay! So I want to know about that time for you between, and I don't know if this is your experience at all.
Ask me.
But I recognize in many women there is a period of time in which we are externally validated and we experience ourselves on a daily basis through the eyes of men because we're receiving so much sexual information from them. And it obviously is different in different eras, but it takes different forms, but it's the same thing. And then you go through this change and that energy toward you changes, partially because your energy changes and partially because, different men are attracted to you, whatever, million reasons, but it changes. And so I want to know about that period of time for you, not only as a woman, but as an actress, and what was happening in your career, but most importantly, how you felt about it.
What age parameters are we talking about, Pussycat?
I think, I don't know when it happened for you, but when you realized that you were making the shift into midlife, and for me, it didn't sort of happen until 42, and I'm in the middle of it. So I want to know about that time, because the myth in our industry is that women stop working and crawl into a hole at that time, and the myth in society is the same. From 40 until 70, you're supposed to disappear and be quiet, and then you can wear your purple hat and run around yelling at everyone,
Oh, yeah, those funny ladies, those dear ladies. Yeah, they're quite amazing.
Yeah.
Hold on a second now. Let me just go. 1936 is my birthday. birth year, so 30, 40. When I was 40, that was the year that I was invited to Stratford for the first time. And the only time.
Stratford means the
So Stratford Shakespearean Festival in Stratford, Ontario. And had the privilege of working with some amazing actors, including the wonderful Maggie Smith, etc. And that was a great, great, great lesson for me in the sense that I had the extraordinary opportunity to work with a company of 74 actors, right, in Shakespeare, Noel Coward, etc., in one of the finest theaters of the world. And it was fantastic. It was marvelous. I came back to Toronto the following year, and I wasn't invited back to the festival. I came back to Toronto, started working in another job altogether in order to support the children, and then started working doing publicity for theaters. And by 1980, there wasn't much work for me. By that time, I was 44. I was working as a secretary and not getting very much work on television. And my brother suggested I learn how to be a travel agent, which is the family's industry. And so I went to New York for 6 months with Zach and trained in the family travel agency. Came back to Toronto.
How did you feel when he asked you to?
When he suggested I become a traveler? Oh, I was desperate because I simply wasn't getting work.
Why did you think you weren't getting any work?
Because of my age. I had suddenly hit that brick wall.
Yeah.
And I'm not the writer that you are. I had not, and I still have not really created my own shows. Now I have in a way, but not original things. I use material that is already there, songs that are already there, or poems or essays for spoken word work, right? And I just needed to support my children, and I didn't know how else to do it. So I was working as a secretary and telephone operator and all those different things that one does.
So when you went to New York, did you feel like that was the end of your career?
No. I never felt that way. I felt I was being trained for 6 months in a new profession. I could come back to Toronto. I could work as, what do they call them now? An outside, that's not the right word, not franchise, that's not the word, commission. I could work as a commission travel agent for an individual travel agency. And I could still be, because then you're not working 9 to 5. And then I could work also doing performance.
Right.
And that's what I did. So it was fine for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that was the 1980s. And then when Zach, this was exciting, and I was doing very well in television. I started resuscitating all of that and doing lots and lots of commercials. I was doing lots of voice work for national commercials for cars, tons of them, as well as voice animation stuff in Toronto. And then Zacharias Ward, my young actor son, he graduated from high school and decided to explore the planet. And he bought a one-way ticket around the planet for a year. And off he went to Australia. Carson T. Foster, my firstborn son, was running the back room at the Rivoli on Queen Street West, booking all the entertainment, like the Kids in the Hall and Holly Cole and all those marvelous performers. So I didn't have to play mom anymore. And I sat down with a book, Shakti Gawain's book, about, I can't remember the title of it. At any rate, I remember she said, okay, use your imagination now. If there was absolutely no limitation to money, no limitation physically, no barriers whatsoever, what would you really like to be doing right now? And I wrote, I'd like to be studying classical theater. And then she wrote, and where would you like to be doing what you'd like to be doing? And I wrote, I don't know, I think London. And I picked Carson came home from work that night, and I told him the next morning what I was thinking about. He said, well, go to New York. I said, that's not the center of classical theater. He said, go to L.A. I said, that's not the center of classical theater. He said, well, then go to London. I said, I don't have the money. He said, Mom, you've been very courageous about raising us. Would you please be courageous about raising yourself? Go standby on British Airways. Get over there. Crash at your cousin's in Windsor. And then 3 weeks later, go on the British Dole. I went, I will not do that. He said, just shut up for a minute. Go on the British Dole, and they'll provide you with tuition for school. And then you stay in a council flat with 20 indigent individuals. Sleep on the floor if you have to, but just damn well do it. I went, all right, I'll go. So I went to the library, and the reference library, and I looked up the schools that had a 1-year course. I figured that's what I needed, was 1 year. Mm-hmm. And I discovered that the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts had a 1-year course for overseas actors. And the tuition was, at that time, this was 1988, the tuition was $12,500 US. I wrote to them and said, I'd like to audition for you. I'm 53 years old. If I'm not too old and you like what I do, would you be willing to, and you accept me, would you be willing to give me a scholarship? And they wrote back and said, you're not too old, we'll audition you, we'd love to, but we can't give you a scholarship, we can only give those to UK students. You'll have to apply for your local grants organizations. So I rushed back to the library and looked up the Canada Council of the Arts and the Ontario Council of the Arts and discovered senior arts grants, one for $12,500 from each one. And I applied for both of them. One was for tuition, one was for living expenses. I got both of them. I cashed in my RSP from ACTRA, sold almost everything I owned, and off I went. It was very exciting.
So
I was scared to death. 53, I arrived, and I was the oldest person in the class. Right, of course.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
So I want to talk about one of my favorite stories about this time in your life. And I remember actually, because Pam and I met before I had decided to become an actress, I remember you telling me about your choice to go back to school at 53. And it was one of the things that I used as inspiration to start acting at 35.
Good.
You know, because I was like, well, if Pam can do that, you know,
I can do this.
Yeah, I could, because one of the things I thought about was being in class with a bunch of young, beautiful 20-somethings and thinking, I don't belong here.
Oh, fiddle farts.
Yeah. So what was that like when you first went back to class?
It was very challenging, and it was challenging for a different reason than it would be for you, I think. I'm 53. Everybody else in the course, there's 36 people in the course. Most of the students are North American, and they've just graduated from university with their hot ticket from their BAs in theater or whatever those are called.
Right.
They've never been on a professional stage. They've never been in front of a camera. They've never done anything professionally, but they are so full of piss and vinegar, and they know everything, right? And they're rude to the teachers. I mean, they're talking back to the teachers. I'm watching this going, how dare you, insolent twits? You don't know what you're talking about. You're arrogant. And I remember calling Carson and Zach, because by this time Zach had circled the globe. And I called Carson and Zach, and they said, Mom, your job is not to be a parent to any of those people. Just give to them in rehearsal and in class what you would like to receive from them. Focus on what you need to learn from your instructors. And as I think I told you, you knew this. When I arrived in that school, my hair was still bright red and it was long, and I always wore full makeup, which I'm wearing now because I do like color on my face. On the 4th day of school, the principal called me into his office for a tutorial, supposedly. And he said, do you know, darling, if you go back to Canada having just played Lady Cap and Amelia, no point in your having come here. You've already done those roles in your Stratford. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, well, dear, I think you should go for the tough roles, don't you? You're doing scene study now in Hamlet and Othello. I said, okay, fine, I'll go for Gertrude and Amelia. He said, no, dear. Go for Iago, Othello, Hamlet, Claudius, the Ghost. I went, cross-gender? I went, yes, dear, but you will have to fight for them. So the next day, the hair was down to here. I didn't put any color on the face. I didn't have a tummy. I didn't have a sagging butt. I didn't have sagging arms. I was only 53. I was very tight-bodied still. I went into Earl's Court early, wearing a pair of Carson's old leather jean slacks, or whatever you call them, a pair of boots, and an aviator jacket of Carson's and a turtleneck sweater. I went to a barber shop, and I sat down and said, take the hair off with a number 2 blade. Are you out of your mind? No, you look like a skinhead. No. I use number 4 blade. If it's not short enough, then we'll go shorter. And he started to cut the hair and then start to shave it. And I sat there watching in that mirror, Mandy, as the hair disappeared, and my cheekbones were still my cheekbones, the nose was still my nose, the jaw, no jowls in those days. It was my face, and I was still the mother of Carson and Zach, and the ex-wife of Todd and John, and the daughter of Thad and Lib, and the sister to Jimmy. But who was looking at me wasn't Pam. It was a guy. Because I had very good, well-shaped head, good cheekbones. And I walked down Earl's Court Road to that school, and I looked like a bull dyke or one of the handsomest guys you've ever seen. And when I walked into that school, the teachers and the directors went, oh, darling, how brilliant, how marvelous of you, how courageous, darling. And the British kids who were in the 3-year course, fucking brilliant. Look at Pam, right? The guys in my class took one look at me and went, oh, shit. Because I really looked like a guy, like a strong guy.
Yeah.
And the girls in my class, who all had hair your length and wore a bigger makeup than I've got on now, went, oh, how could you ever cut your hair off? I could never do that. I said, try it. You might find you'll like it. So I got to play Iago, and I got to play Claudius, and I got to, when we did full production in the spring of Lear, I got to play Lear, and that's the hardest damn part in the canon, right? And it was just like, it was so exhilarating to be a beginner again, because when you work television, as you know, there's no time for proper rehearsal in television nowadays. Yeah. And when I started in the biz, it was marvelous. You'd go in for 3 weeks of rehearsals. You'd be there with the whole cast. You'd watch the entire procedure. It was just like a theater rehearsal. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, you go in for your day as the mother of or the sister of or the whatever the heck you have to play. You're put into hair, makeup, and wardrobe, and then you're brought onto set for lighting. You're told where to hit what marks. You're introduced to the person that you're supposed to be married to or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Then you're sent back to your little Winnebago or whatever it's called, the little honey wagon. And then you wait until you're called on set. And so you invariably take shortcuts in your acting, right? So suddenly when you're in a good drama school, you're working with classical language, you're working with poetry, it's exhilarating and it's utterly terrifying, and you're having to start from the very beginning, and you're crashing all over the place and making a total mess of yourself. And you're feeling like a total failure, and it's fine because you're in the most protected environment in the world, and it's just heaven. Mm-hmm. It's just heaven. I'm so grateful I went back, and it showed me what I was capable of, Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that I ever got jobs in Stratford again. I'm obviously not destined to be performing in Stratford, but that's okay. It's all right.
Okay, I need to go back to that moment when they were cutting your hair off.
Yeah.
Because that's what this feels like for me.
Yes, of course it does, with showing the gray.
But it's daily.
Yeah.
And it's a different experience every day. So you saw yourself turn into a man.
Yep.
What was that experience like in terms of your identification with body and form and femininity?
Well, I'll tell you. Back in 1971... when I was on the end of a phone to the fathers of my 2 children saying, do you think you could perhaps give me some money to feed the boys? And I would get the answer of, you can't get blood from a stone, Bam, right, from both of the gentlemen. And they're nice gentlemen, but I got so tired of hearing myself be a victim. Please, would you? I finally said, screw this. I decided I'm tired of picking up the phone and begging for money, which is a tedious thing to do. And so I decided I'm going to cash in my last security money, namely a mortgage on a house that I had co-owned with Carson's dad. and I'm going to move to the Yukon. Because I performed on a riverboat in the Yukon back in 1962, and I fell in love with the enormity of that land and the silence of it. That's the first thing that really prompted me to want to go into quietude, into wondering what I'm doing in a human body, but I couldn't really make that tangible at the time. I was much too young and too locked into my Pam Hyatt kooky nitwit performer persona. I had bought too much into the hype around Pam Hyatt in my 20s. I was still enamored of me, actor. Aren't I cute? Oh. At any rate, so I arranged to sell the mortgage in order to have the money to move to the Yukon. I'll cut to the chase now and just say, off I went to the Yukon.
And you were in your 40s?
I was 35.
Right.
The question you asked.
I asked about when you shed the hair.
Yeah.
The experience of shedding the feminine.
Okay, I know. Okay. So I was just going to go there with the boy. Carson could only come with me for the summer because the divorce agreement said he had to live in Ontario.
Okay.
But Zach could come with me for the whole time I was going to be there.
Oh.
So, cut to the chase, Pamela. CBC Radio asked me to write, because I was known as a comedian, they asked me to write comedy scripts about living north of the 60th parallel. And as I started to pound out these scripts on my funky old typewriter, I heard myself speaking in men's voices. And it was because I was imitating the people that I heard at the post office. That's where we got our mail. And I discovered I could do these other voices. And I don't know how else to say it. It seems quite simple to me and quite logical to me that we are both male and female. And for us to identify solely as one gender, fine and dandy. I wear the body of a woman. And I have birthed children. And I have loved men. I've also loved women, right? I'm not with any partner now, and I am not looking to be with anybody because I find at this point in my life, I'm married to myself and I'm quite content, right? But I never, that didn't bother me at all to sound like a man. As you know, I have a wonderful monologue that I do where I play an 83-year-old man who is a Walmart greeter and he hates his job. And that is one of the best monologues I've ever had. And someday I've got to put it on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I've never felt concerned about that.
That's really interesting. I was speaking with someone the other day that I'm hoping I'm going to have on the show, who identifies as a woman but was born a man. And he was talking about the difference between walking around the world as a man and walking around the world as a woman, and that there's this anonymity that comes with walking around as a man. Did you feel that difference when you had your hair short? No. Well, I felt a power. I felt a power when I walked around as a man. There was a strength there. There was a strength there that hadn't been present when I was walking around as a woman. Although people tell me that I've always had a distinctive presence or whatever. I'm never aware of it. It's just like, that's my life, whatever. Yeah. Do you think that power comes from the way other people experience you when you walk in the room and the energy that they give off? Like, I can speak for myself in that way. When I walk into a space and I am presenting in a very feminine way, like with my hair done and makeup and dressed up and what have you, that there's the expectation of a response from the room. Because that's been my experience.
Say that again. There's an you have an expectation? I
have an expectation
of a response. What kind of a response?
Staring, mostly.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a sexual attraction from men, but also from women, an admiration or a regard. I don't know that I've ever really tried to define it, but it's become such a part of my everyday experience that when it started to go away, or when I started to maybe not want it, if I felt a very significant shift. And it's like I identified myself by the effect I had on the room when I entered it, as opposed to walking into the room and experiencing the people in the room.
Being willing to observe and take in what is there without judging it or critiquing it is an important thing to be able to do. To open ourselves up to the kindness of strangers, I guess is a nice way of putting it, right?
And I think for some women, and for me as well, to a degree, that impact that I was having on the room, when I started to become insecure about it, it was because I was feeling like I was being judged.
Okay.
And it's a slippery slope. Obviously, it's not a slippery slope. It's a cliff. When you concern yourself with how people are seeing you when you walk in the room. And I know it started at 11 or 12.
Really?
Actually, I know it started at 5. I remember the first time I walked out. My grandmother was having a pool party, and I walked out in a bikini. First time I ever wore a bikini.
At the age 5?
5.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was bikiniing, like it was 1980, so it was probably like fluorescent or whatever. And I was like bikiniing, and someone whistled at me.
Oh my.
Yeah. And I turned around and ran back in the house.
Right.
Didn't wear a bikini again until my mid-30s.
Wow.
And made the connection talking to my therapist
Right.
when that story came up again for me, that was connected.
Right.
Like, I knew it was sexy. I knew the word sexy.
Yeah. At
Like,
age 5? Right.
yeah, sexy, but not sex.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And I knew that it wasn't for me, and I was confused about what that was.
Yeah.
So
That's tricky.
Being sexualized, and then living in Harborfront, and I remember there was always construction workers from age 6 until 10, and they were always
Ogling.
Oh yeah, but I was a child, so it was a joke, kind of.
Right.
Like woo woo, we whistle at all the women. Let's whistle at the little girls too because it's funny.
Right.
Or whatever the hell was going on. It became like I don't know if I feel emotional about this. If from that point on, I ever very rarely felt safe
Really?
to express myself physically, and not because I was molested or abused or assaulted or anything like that. It was just a slow chipping away at my ability to experience myself without someone else trying to determine
Or trying to label you?
yeah
Lay something
or
on you.
make my presence be about them and their experience of me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are a lot of other layers to that, having to do with the way my father experienced women and the way my mother was experienced. She was beautiful, but I know that I've been making an effort to take that back. And part of my attraction to hip hop has to do with this feeling like I couldn't express myself sexually or, have angry male emotions in a place and feel safe.
Right.
Because when I really do express myself physically, sexually, dancing or walking or like it holding my space, 4 men will walk by and appreciate it, and then the 5th one is asking me if I'm a prostitute or calling me a slut or spitting in my face, like all of these experiences I've had.
Oh dear.
So it's like, as soon as I give power to the first man who appreciates the way that I look, then the 5th man who spits in my face also has power. It's so interesting to me to hear that you have not had this experience for most of your life, because it feels so rare to me to meet a woman who, even as a young woman, felt okay in her skin. It's amazing.
Well, I've told you the story about the Davy Crockett guy.
I don't remember.
Oh yes, yeah. That was my one sort of wake-up call. When I was working at, I'll call it a steamship company. It was between my freshman and sophomore year in college. And Alcoa is in Manhattan, and Alcoa's corporate headquarters were down on the Battery, right in the tip at the end of Manhattan Island. And I was in the secretarial pool. And this one morning, I arrive and I see tents in the park, and it's the sort of New York State Fair thing. And I go up to our floor, and the secretarial pool is a madhouse. God, the muscles. I'm going, what? There's a Davy Crockett in the park. You wouldn't believe how adorable he is. Oh my God, he's such a hunk. I'm going, don't be ridiculous. You know, because I'm a college girl, and I know better than to behave like that. There's about 35 girls in this secretarial pool. Right? To, of course, in lunch, I go to the park. I have my lunch, I go into this little small building to look at some artwork. And a voice behind me says, "What college do you go to?" And I turn around, and there is standing Mr. Universe, right? But dressed in a Davy Crockett outfit, like with the buckskin pants, the Davy Crockett coonskin hat, the buckskin jacket, but honey, it ain't fastened. It's like open and this massive, you know. And I looked at him, I went, "You've never heard of it." And I turned around and looked back at the picture of the painting. He said, "Try me." And I said, "Sweetbriar College." He said, "In Virginia?" I went, "Yes." He said, "Do you know Betsy and Tacey Taylor?" Or whatever their last name was. I went, "How do you know them?" And he said, "They live across the street from me in Poughkeepsie." I went, "No joke," right? And like that broke the ice, and we were talking. We're human beings. We're talking to each other. And so we're talking, and he's telling me his name. I don't remember his name. "Would you like to go to dinner tonight?" I went, "Well, not if you're wearing that." And he said, No. I can meet you at the end of work today. When do you get off?" I said, 5. He said, "I'll meet you, and I'll be in this outfit, I warn you, and we'll take the subway up to Times Square because my hotel, everybody in the park, in the fair, is staying at the hotel on 42nd Street and then, you know, between Broadway and 6th. I said, "Okay, but I can't stay out late because I have to get out to Long Island. I have to work in the morning." He said, "Okay, cool." We go into the subway. I'm with Davy Crockett. We go up to Times Square.
In his outfit.
In his outfit, of course. Then we go, because he's got to change into regular clothes.
Yeah.
We go to the hotel. He sits me down in the lobby. And I said, "I want to meet the Indians," because there was an Indian group with the fair. He said, "Okay, we've got a suite upstairs for everybody." And he said, "After I get changed, I'll call you, and then you can come up to the suite and meet the Indians." I said, "Great." So I just sit there, and I'm waiting politely. And then in the old days, a bellhop calls, "Pamela Hyatt, telephone call for Pamela Hyatt." I go over and pick up the phone. "Okay, you can come on up. It's suite number such and so." I go, "Okay." I go up to the room. I'm perfectly calm, right? Knock on the door. Door opens. I walk in. Door is slammed behind me. There's only 2 beds there. And there he is, standing there in his, not a G-string, you didn't wear the jockey shorts. I said, "Where are the Indians?" You know, typical. It wasn't funny, though.
It's not funny.
It wasn't funny because my heart was like going, what's going, because I was in those days, darling, nice young ladies were supposed to be virgins when they got married, you know, so you would pet and do those things, but you weren't supposed to ever do anything more. He said, "Pamela, don't be ridiculous." And boom. And I started pounding, and I'm starting to cry. And I said, "Let's go to the bathroom, please." And he releases me to go to the bathroom. I lock the door. I sit on the can, and I'm crying my eyes out. And he said, "Pamela," I said, "I'll scream." I called out, "I'm going to scream. I'm going to get the manager to come." And he said, "What do you think would happen if a manager came? Wouldn't it be a wonderful story for the New York Daily News? Pamela Hyatt, whose father owns Caribbean Holidays and Air and Marine Travel Service, was found in a hotel room with Davy Crockett. I mean, that would really look good for you. Wouldn't your parents be pleased?" I'm, no. You know you don't want that to happen. And I'm crying. I'm just like bereft. I don't know what to do. You can't go out the window because you're going to fall down to the street, right? And finally he said, "Come on out. I'm not going to attack you, I promise you." I opened the door, and he was sitting on the bed, and he said, "Come and sit down on the bed opposite me." And I sat down on the bed opposite him, and he said, "I want you to do me a favor, and I want to teach you something." He said, "Stand up and put your arms at your side and make your body go absolutely rigid, and do not be afraid. I am not going to hurt you, I promise you." And I closed my eyes and put my arms, and so I'm like a javelin, right? And he literally, Mandy, I don't know how the hell he did it, but he picks me up, just bench presses me up above his head, and I weighed 150 pounds at the time. And he holds me up there. He said, "Don't move now, just keep yourself absolutely rigid. You've got to hold that posture." And I'm holding it. And I'm just so scared. And he said, "Now, do you think you would have a chance in hell to get away from somebody who is this strong?" And I said, No. He said, "Right. Let me put you down." He put me down. He said, "Sit down." He said, "You're a very nice girl, and your parents obviously brought you up very well. And you should never, ever in your life accept an invitation to go into a hotel room with any man." And I'll tell you something, Mandy. I'm very grateful he did that, because that was it. You look at me as like you think he was a bad person? No, I look at the people who are stupid enough to go to hotel rooms for meetings with directors and people like that. I'm sorry, I had that lesson taught to me in spades by this guy. He said, "I'm going to take you to dinner. Don't worry, go downstairs. I'll change into a suit. I promise never to touch you except to shake your hand and to wish you Godspeed, but we'll have a good lobster dinner. Are you ready for that?" I went, "Yes." It scared the hell out of me. But it opened my eyes. No, you don't go to a hotel room unless you're prepared to have sex. End of discussion. Stop being naive. Stop playing games. Stop pretending that anything other than that is what is being asked of you. And I'm very grateful. And I don't even know his name. I'd love to be able to send him a letter. I'm 83 almost now. He's probably about 87. I'd love to say, "Thank you, whoever you are or were. God bless you for what you did, because you really did teach me a lesson." And then I would knowingly, if I wanted to have sex with somebody, fine, then I would go to the hotel room. But I could never, ever play the game of "me too," because quite frankly, that's all anybody ever has been wanting when they ask you to a hotel room. Nothing else is being done. It's bullshit. I'm very blunt about that. I know people are going to hate me for what I'm saying, and I don't care. Why do people... You're taught by the media, you gotta be sexy, gotta wear all these wonderful clothes, get the tits up, right? Paint your face as much as you can, be as sexy as you possibly can. But don't you ever touch me. What are you asking for? What are you asking for, ladies and gentlemen?
Well, wait a minute. I don't know if that, yes, we're taught by the media, I agree with that part, but by looking beautiful and presenting your sexuality, like I was saying earlier, walking down the street, fully embodying all of the parts of me, the humanity of me, and part of that is how I feel about myself sexually. And then somebody thinks that they get to own me or touch me or own the space that I'm in because I have a sexuality about me, that somehow means that they get to participate in that in a sexual way. I don't understand where the correlation is between how I decide to dress and what someone gets to own or have of me.
Well, I'm talking mainly about going up the stairs up to a bedroom in a hotel primarily is what I'm talking about.
Because there's a lot more to me too than just a hotel room. Mm-hmm. You know, I had an experience with a casting director where I was in an office. I went to a casting, went into his office to say hello, and then he proceeded to make a series of jokes about my vagina.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Like, he knew that I had a son. He knew that I had a son young, because I'd been going to that office for many, many years. And one of the jokes was, does your son know that if you put a string through your pussy lips that it would be a hoodie?
Oh, dear. That's strange.
So that's me walking into a job interview.
In Toronto.
Yeah. So the nature of the business is such that it takes...
See, I've never experienced anything like that. I don't know why.
Right.
I don't know why.
So it takes place in film festivals, right? I've been to a lot of film festivals, as you know, in Cannes and Toronto and markets all over the world. And we're in hotels. Everyone's staying in hotels.
I know.
No one has an office. You don't, yes, you can set up meetings in restaurants obviously, but I have been in hotels where I'm like with a person, you make a connection at a film festival and they invite you to join them for the rest of the evening to go to a party that you can't get into because you're not on the list.
Right.
And then, okay, we'll just come by the room, we'll have some drinks, I share the room with so-and-so and such, and that's the environment. Yeah. Everyone's going to each other's hotel rooms and sharing drinks and what have you, and like, you don't know what you're walking into, but you also know that this person's going to get you into the party where you have the chance to meet the people that you can't get to otherwise. Right. And so I'm going to take that risk and go into that hotel room and have that drink. And I don't know what's going to come of it.
I understand that.
But what are the other options? To beat the door down for the next 15 years and try, you know what I mean? Yes, that's an option. Is it to assume that everyone's trying to rape me by inviting me to go to a
hotel room?
You know what I mean? So I know that things have changed and they also haven't changed. And it's like the fact that I have to be on my guard and that I felt like I had to be on my guard since I was first sexualized at 5, and then coming into an industry that is predicated on your appearance and sex and image and who has the keys to the vault, who has the keys to the money and who has the keys to the decision makers and what gives you access to that. Right. And for so long, going to these festivals and experiencing the entertainment business, 7 years, not so long, but long enough.
No, it's long enough.
It's become very clear to me that the way in which to make friends initially is because somebody comes up to talk to you because they think you're beautiful. So if this is my power, now I'm facing my responsibility in using that power in order to try to hold the door open long enough that I can then express my intelligence, my abilities as a writer, as a producer, as an actress, my training, my blah, 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 blah. Yeah. How long can I keep my foot in the door to convince them that I'm not just someone they want to fuck, but actually someone they want to work with? Yeah. Because almost every single time I'm talking to a man, and it's just way easier for them to... Sexualize me. And reach for whatever's closest, whomever they know already and who's got the goods. I'm 35, I'm starting in an industry, I don't have the credits, bloody blah. So what do I use? I have a pretty strict rule that I don't shit where I eat, so I don't date actors or producers or directors or whatever. For the most part, I try to steer clear because of that. But I definitely pay attention to how I look and who's looking at me and stay open to the conversations and, use that to my advantage. So now I'm in a situation where I don't want to do that anymore. I got it. Because I feel what you're saying about that decision. I'm never not aware of what, it's always a weighing situation. What is the potential gain? Yeah. So Harvey Weinstein, the potential gain is... an Oscar, okay, who cares about the Oscar, but role access to scripts and roles and a career. That's what those women were facing. Right. Versus I can't even get my foot in the door. I can't even get an agent. I can't even, this is my life's work. Right. And I you're shaving your head is another woman giving him a blowjob. Right. So this experience for me is about my struggle with my responsibility for that, my part in the patriarchal society where I'm only being experienced by the world as this meat suit with dyed hair and
Yeah.
nice skin.
Right.
That doesn't mean that I don't love beauty,
I understand that.
You know?
Yeah, I do.
but I've never seen, well, not never, because I'm starting to see it, but like, what does a woman look like when she's aging naturally and has gray hair at my age and at 50 and 60 and 70? And what does that look like as it slowly changes, instead of trying to jab my face with shit and like
Right.
cover myself in chemicals? And I don't know, because there are no examples of it in the media for me to look at.
Mm-hmm.
I have my beautiful, brave mother who went gray at whatever age, 45 or something. I don't remember how old she was, but it was a long time that I was like, God, woman, dye your hair. Like, what are you doing? Not until the past 3 years have I been able to look at her and be like, oh, shit. Wow, you're brave. I mean, she cuts her own hair, so that's a whole other conversation. But, like, it's all tied together. I feel like Me Too is part of what gave me the strength to be at this stage that I'm at right now. And I think it's connected to a lot of the women that I'm seeing deciding to go gray. And I think it's the beginning of something in Hollywood as well. I hope it is. I thought of something else I wanted to ask you when I was going on that monologue. You mentioned to me when I saw you at a Silmar on the weekend, when I came to pick you up,
Yeah.
that when I first went public about my decision to dye my hair.
Yeah.
Now, Pam has been a mentor to me since the beginning of my career, as I mentioned earlier. And, when I first decided, you were one of the first people that I talked to about it. And you so graciously offered to train me in projection and diction, and I have so many exercises that I still use that you taught me.
And she because she ran a cheerleading business, her self-discipline is extraordinary, and she took on board everything and worked her ass off, and would come back the next week having really mastered all sorts of exercises that I'd given her. It was really exciting, very, very thrilling to teach you.
Thank you.
It was so thrilling, so thrilling.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're the best student I've ever had.
Woo!
There you are.
So your opinion as my muse and also my mentor has always meant so much to me. So you mentioned that when I went public with it, you had an immediate response and you spoke with Carson, your son, about it. So I want to hear what that response was and talk about that as well.
I asked you the question, are you focusing on writing or are you focusing on acting? And if you're focusing on acting in this town, as you know, this town is youth-oriented, and it seemed to me, I take a look at Meryl Streep. She dyes her hair. Everybody dyes their hair.
Everyone under 70.
Yeah, under 70 dyes their hair.
Yeah.
My feeling was, if you want to have a career as an actress here, then I think it is naive of you to let the hair go gray. I said, what you could do is, if you want it to go gray, because it's going to be slow if you're going to keep it long, then I would suggest what you do is get great wigs of long hair, the color that you like. Mm-hmm. Get a great wig of long hair gray, and cut your own hair off, like crew cut it, and let it go gray underneath the wigs. Or let it go gray at home, and when you go out, put one of the great long wigs on.
Why?
Why? Because then you can discover what it's going to look like. You can discover what it's going to look like as it grows out underneath.
So, what would Pam, the Pam that was at Lambda, have done? Because for you, it seems like it's about the character, right? Mm-hmm. And so, do you feel like my going gray limits what I can play in the world, or do you think it's because Hollywood is youth oriented and
I think it's because Hollywood is youth oriented primarily?
Too big of a battle for me to fight.
I think it's a very, very big battle for you. I hope you don't mind my saying it, but I really do think it's a huge battle, and I think there are better battles to be won. I think I chose, as you know, when when I met you, my hair still had red in it in 2008. I was born bright redhead. bright, bright, bright red hair. And as my hair started to age, it went into golds. Golds were floating through my hair. Some silvers were floating through. It was very interesting textures and very interesting colors. And then it started to get a little bit dull. And I don't like dull. I find dull. And so I turned to my hairdresser and said, I'd like to do something that makes me feel cheerful when I look at myself. And he said, do you want to try platinum? And I said, yes, let's try it. And that's what we do. We do platinum. And I decide to let go of dyeing it and see what color it turns out to be. I have no idea what color it is in there. I have no idea. Yeah. I just like the brightness of it.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about my red hair too. Yeah. But it stopped being fun at some point and started to be shame.
Oh, it's never been shame.
Felt like I was covering and trying to hide because it's so gray. There's so much to cover, and it doesn't match what society thinks someone with gray hair's face looks like.
I know.
So it's confusing. But I know, statistically speaking, first of all, 75% of women in America dye their hair.
Right.
20% are under the age of 14.
That's ridiculous. Yeah. That is totally stupid.
It's true.
Yeah, but it's stupid. It's totally stupid.
So what is under there for all of us? It's like women have collectively decided to present femininity and as something that it's actually not.
Yeah.
And our age as something that it's not. I know in the UK, 32% of women under the age of 30 are going gray.
Under the age of 30, that's amazing.
32%. And I think it was 10 years prior, it was only 11%.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's environmental, something's going on this is happening for everyone. I don't know what, but hopefully over the course of this podcast, we'll start to be able to uncover what's really going on. Yeah. But I know that, every woman that I know dyes her hair or has dyed her hair. Right? So I think that there's a space in entertainment for this because I think that there's a space in the world for it. And entertainment, as you and I have discussed many times, I think that storytelling is the front lines of change. And as someone who writes, I feel like I have more power to do that for sure. But the barriers between the audience and the creators are shrinking. Those barriers that we were talking about earlier, even
in the car,
getting access to money and funding and whatever. I just bought an anamorphic lens for my phone, which previously was
amazing.
$30,000. Now it's $150. It's like, we no longer have to acquiesce.
Yeah.
Because the person in charge of the entertainment industry is only choosing to put on film something that is aligned with his version of femininity or his sexual fantasy. This whole diversity push, I don't know if it's really changed anything because it's just like, well, male sexual fantasy was a white woman with blonde hair and now it's an Asian woman. And she still doesn't have a meaningful role and she still doesn't have anything powerful to say. And it's still only 4% of everything is being directed by a woman. Like, we're still looking at everything through male gaze. And until we start creating our own work and putting imagery up that is brave and honest, because we can create our own work and just continue to perpetuate what we've seen. And I even find that when I'm writing and when I'm reading a script and going into an audition, the choices that I make when I walk in the audition room trickle up because everyone sees those tapes. And when I go into audition with my hair like this, it's a conversation. I can guarantee it's a conversation for the casting, for the director, producers. It's a conversation. And it's like the more times I show up with this, the more normal the conversation, it won't be a big deal anymore.
That's great, yeah.
But if I'm the only one, I have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm hoping with this that other women will find the bravery to help because it's scary as fuck. I get up in the morning and I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and it's, what are you doing? Is my first thought. Not, wow, cool, at all. It's like, are you sure?
Why don't you, well, because you don't want to cut it all off.
It feels
I
like
think that would be
a political
really
statement to
interesting.
me right now.
What?
It feels like a political statement to me right now to have the red and to say I'm doing this. It's like part of the transition for sure. I also feel like I don't know if I'm ready to let go of this yet. Mm-hmm.
You're attached to your hair.
I'm attached to it.
I know.
It's part of my identity.
Yeah, I know.
And it's part of the identity of the people who know me. Like my redheaded friend, she's a redheaded rapper. It's part of the tagline.
But that's when I gave up, when I had my head shaved.
Yeah.
The identity with the hair. It is so freeing, Mandy. I can't tell you how freeing it is.
I believe you.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is freeing.
I'm feeling it already. But it's gradual. And I have to stay present with it. It has to be one day at a time. I thought about going to a charity event that I got invited to, and I was like, what would I do? Because it's like the cool kids, at the charity event.
Yeah.
Head of this studio or that thing or whatever. I was like, oh, that's a great opportunity to be in the room with people instead of going to a hotel room,
Right.
But why is this so terrifying? So when you said your question was, do you want to be a writer or an actor? Mm-hmm. It's really funny because one of the scariest things for me isn't so much attached to the acting part of it, because already as a woman in my 40s who's Caucasian at this point in time, I'm not working.
Right.
I'm not getting auditions. Writing is my new, it's a feeling of power and what have you. I was at a panel talk, and there were 4 or 5 women on stage and a man, and they were talking about diversity and hiring writers. And I knew that I was in the room with a lot of writers that were over 50. I was one of the younger people in the room, but that's who could afford to take this course because it was $1,000 for the weekend. And it was a chance to get close to the development people and the decision makers at all of the production companies and studios and networks.
Right.
So on the panel, they kept saying, yes, we champion young writers. We want young voices, young this, young Latinas, young black, through the entire 1-hour panel. And every time they said young, I was cringing.
Oh, God.
Because not just for me, because I can pass as young, but for the people in the room that I knew couldn't, that I'd seen sitting around round tables being like, yeah, I'm old, but I wrote this thing. I used to be a lawyer, and now I'm apologizing physically for their age and experience instead of rejoicing in it and saying, look at what I have to offer.
Yeah.
Right? And so I put my hand up, and let's just say I knew one of the people on the panel, had worked with them previously and hoped to work with them again someday. Another person I had reached out to hoping to work with, and another one, like, I want to work with them all. That's why I'm there. And I'm like, if I say this, I'm going to piss them off, but I have to.
Of course.
So I was like, I appreciate this panel very much. I compliment and truth about what this really means. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm wondering about your choice of the word young, because personally I didn't start in the entertainment business until the age of 35, and thankfully I had a show, and got these wonderful things, but I feel like there's a wide gap that we're missing in entertainment, in speaking to older audiences and providing material for older audiences who are actually the ones at home watching television, let's be honest, and going to the movies. Ticket sales for people over the age of 50 are on the rise at movie theaters, where they're on the decline everywhere else. So why are you ignoring them in the theaters?
Good for you.
Yeah. And the response was very powerful and very defensive from everyone on the panel. Like, oh, well, I have a passion project with a woman who's 50, and I didn't mean, like, I don't mean that. So, whatever. But it's a passion project, which to me,
what does that mean?
Indicates that, oh, it's something that I'm probably never going to get paid for, but I'm just doing it because I like it.
Okay.
Is what is the subtext of the word passion project in Hollywood.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then another person from a network who is definitely in her late 50s got very aggressive and said, writers need to learn how to write for their age. They have to stop trying to write young characters. They have to, and I was like, why the fuck do you think they're trying to write young characters when every word out of your mouth is about wanting young writers?
Right.
it's insidious. And it's so the point of this story is, as a writer, I'm almost more afraid to walk into a room with gray hair than I am. Yes. Because the shift has gone from, okay, it's all old white men, to now complete pendulum swing. We want people who can barely make sentences to, I also spoke with a friend of mine who's a development executive at a studio, like really high up, makes the decisions, who said, yes, I remember when I first started here, I would be the youngest guy in the room and everyone would look to me for my opinion because it was more important and weighted more heavily than anyone else's because I was the young one in the room. And now that I'm in my mid-40s, I'm working as hard as I can, as many hours a day as I can to make as much money as I can because I know that my time is limited and I'm about to get aged out. And he's about 45. So it's not just the face. This is where we see it, and that's where I think it's very interesting to explore, to put it on screen, because I think that's got to be where it starts to change, because it's almost like this self-loathing that Hollywood has.